Open.
Good morning. I'm Charles Kuralt, and this is Sunday Morning. If our surroundings are unfamiliar to you, well, let me confide that they are strange to us, too. That's why we're here for this one Sunday, to try to become more familiar with this place, which is important to us all. We are in Japan. A great lot of history will come to an end in Japan this week. A few hours ago, here in Tokyo, a slow motorcade rehearsed for an event which last occurred here 62 years ago, the funeral of an emperor. Hirohito, who was born a god and whose reign encompassed Japan's greatest depression and greatest war and greatest ruin and greatest prosperity, all that in one lifetime. Emperor Hirohito will be buried this week. President George Bush of the United States and representatives of about 150 other countries will attend the state funeral on Friday. We are here to think about the past and the future. What is Japan to the United States now? Gadfly? Ally? Partner? Rival? That question is the subject of our cover story, to be reported later by David Culhane.
This week, George Bush, the World War II Navy pilot who was shot down by the Japanese, will represent the United States at the funeral of Japan's wartime emperor. The president will surely use this symbolic moment to reaffirm the friendship and alliance between the two most important industrial powers in the world. But it is also a moment to reassess the economic challenge that Japan represents. Later this Sunday morning, we will find that some experts think we are failing that challenge, and that a heavy price will be paid for that failure by us and by our children.
So there is that to think about, the Japanese as a threat to Americans. But there is so much else. The Japanese as friends to Americans, mysteries to Americans, teachers to Americans in some ways. Faith Daniels even has a story about a Japanese who is an American.
George Nakashima came to New Hope, Pennsylvania as a way of getting out of an internment camp in Idaho during World War II. And here on these 3 acres, he built from the ground up a hands-on woodworking operation that has given him a place in American history. Later on Sunday morning, we'll meet the elder statesman of the American crafts movement.
We will visit a Japanese place of mist and timelessness, a corner of Japan unchanged for 1,300 years. A place that would seem holy even if it were not the holiest Shinto shrine. Bill Geist has some thoughts on work and play in Japan. There is no precise word for leisure in Japanese. In this country, play is pretty hard work. Eugenia Zuckerman on Japanese music performed quite remarkably well by Americans. And John Leonard will show us a face of Japan itself might not choose to show. In a country which has always measured its ages by the lives of its emperors, this whole week is a milepost, of course. Let us begin with the headlines for Sunday morning, the 19th of February. Yasser Arafat says Israel has asked the Palestine Liberation Organization for a truce in southern Lebanon. In an interview with Mike Wallace of CBS News, Arafat says Israel and the PLO are talking to each other through third parties. Salman Rushdie, the author of the violently controversial novel Satanic Verses, says he is sorry his book has caused such distress to Muslims. Iran says that's not enough. Iran still wants him dead. He is in hiding. 2 counties of western North Carolina are digging out this morning from a record snowfall after days of 70 and 80-degree weather. The snow and ice fall in North Carolina and Virginia has mostly stopped now. Most of Washington state is buried under Washington's worst snowfall of the winter. Floodwaters are receding in Kentucky. In a suburb of New Orleans, David Duke, a former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, has won a Republican seat in the Louisiana legislature, in spite of the public opposition of President Bush and former President Reagan.
For years now, Texans have been signing up for the Cladesta brand of long distance because we deliver a better long distance service at a better price. 1+ dialing, full-time operator assistance, our own digital network, lower rates than AT&T, MCI, or Sprint, bills that are clear and simple, and you can call anywhere, anytime. That's long distance the way Texans like it. Sign up with Cladesta now, and in addition to our already big long-distance savings, we'll send you an extra bonus, a full year of Texas Highways magazine, 12 issues free. Texas Highways is the color-packed monthly that's all about the Lone Star State, a magazine as beautiful as Texas itself. So make the Texas choice, Cladesta and Texas Highways. Just call 1-800-441-0987 and sign up now.
We want to be your choice for long distance. Call us. We're Cladesta Communications, and you can count on us.
A Miracle Monday Sellathon, only at your #1 first-team Chevy dealer, Bill Hurd Chevrolet. 1 day only, 12 hours only, 9 till 9 this Monday. Check it out. Astros and Suburbans, $49 over factory invoice, 12 hours only. 88 Corsicas and Berettas, $7,700. Short wheelbase, extended cab, full-size pickups, these extras and more, $99.90 for 12 hours this Monday. Only at your #1 first-team Chevy dealer, Bill Hurd Chevrolet, Sugarland. New 89 Metro, $49.49, Monday only. Southwest Freeway, Sugarland, Bill Hurd Chevrolet.
Tara Meyer's dream of a beautiful wedding almost ended 2 months ago in a car accident. Unfortunately, she wasn't wearing a seatbelt and her face shattered the windshield. But because the windshield was a new type, developed by DuPont, the razor-sharp glass stayed outside, away from Tara's face. At DuPont, we make the things that make a difference. Better things for better living.
Post now, a reminder of how very much can change in less than a single lifetime. I wonder if you can read the date on this document. It says February 19th, 1942, and the bold signature above and to the right of the date is that of Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was on this day, February 19th in 1942, that FDR signed this executive order. It says, whereas the successful prosecution of the war requires every possible protection against sabotage and espionage, as President of the United States, I hereby authorize and direct. This is the order that sent native-born Americans of Japanese descent to internment camps in their own country. There are Japanese Americans who cannot forget even now what was done to them by this order, signed 47 years ago today. There are American soldiers who cannot forget even now what the Japanese did to them when they were prisoners of war. Nobody can forget what happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan and America have had every kind of relationship it is possible to have. We have been wary rivals, then bitter enemies, then conqueror and conquered, then good friends. In one lifetime, in the years since an American president signed this paper, we have reviled and feared and resented and fought each other. And now we depend on each other. That's a milepost, isn't it? And what about the future of this tangled ball of historical yarn that is the relationship between Japan and the United States? Here is our cover story, reported by David Culhane.
The power of the Japanese yen is heard now like a drumbeat through the country. For some, a welcome sound. For others, a source of great anxiety. In Manhattan, the Japanese are buying real estate. The Exxon building. The Tiffany building. 30 Wall Street. They're buying uptown and downtown. holdings now worth $7 billion in the New York area, $35 billion nationwide. And the pulse of Japanese real estate purchases in Hawaii, driving prices in some residential areas into the millions, so alarms Honolulu's mayor that he wants to ban sales to Japanese buyers.
I have proposed that the legislature forbid the sale of residential, preservation, and agricultural land and property to any alien or person who is not a citizen of the United States.
Japanese culture is now on display all over the United States. This performance of taiko drumming took place last week in the Wall Street area of Manhattan. Taiko drums, with their energy and dynamic force, have been called the voice and spirit of the Japanese people. In a single generation, Japan has advanced from the devastation of World War II to become one of the wealthiest and most technologically advanced nations on Earth. The United States is running a trade deficit with Japan of more than $50 billion a year. And we can't seem to get the Japanese to buy more American goods. Like it or not, Japan now represents the major economic challenge for the United States.
I don't think that there is a cabal of Japanese business and government leaders that meets every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock to plot revenge or to plot Japan's reconquest of the world.
Clyde Prestowitz was counselor for Japan Affairs to the Secretary of Commerce in the Reagan administration. He's now with the Carnegie Endowment in Washington.
They have the ability to work together as a team to achieve national objectives. The Japanese have tended to put that same kind of effort behind gaining leadership in the shipbuilding industry, the steel industry, the semiconductor industry, the computer industry, biotechnology, and so forth. The effect is that the Japanese come to dominate the ramparts of industry and technology.
We export or die.
Ambassador Masamichi Hanabusa is the Japanese Consul General in New York.
As a result of our efforts, and with good luck, probably, we made progress in certain areas and in high technology sector. But the continuation of vast imbalance is not a healthy thing, and we are concerned. We know you are concerned, but we are concerned too, and we are making our best effort. We have opened up our markets, and we will try to import as much American products as possible. And the efforts are being made, and I'm optimistic, yes.
Japan is full of talk of the 21st century and where Japan is going to be. No one in the United States is planning where we're going to be in the 21st century, or what industries we're going to be good in. We, the Americans, tend to sit around and not think very much about what industries are going to be important, and very often we're just as likely to put emphasis on maintaining the shoelace industry as we are getting into the computer industry.
I'd like to welcome you all today to the WSU Museum of Art. We're very pleased to have you stop by to visit our exhibition. Have you been here before? Oh, that's good.
All around the United States, people are beginning to look again at Japanese history and culture.
We do prints with sponge. Well, they do prints with wood. It's called wood block prints.
This exhibit of 19th century Japanese wood block prints is at Washington State University. For 300 years, Japan shunned all contact with the West. There were elements of racism on both sides of that equation. Then in 1853, American Commodore Matthew Perry forced his way in with a few battleships and insisted that the Japanese do business with us. Japan had begun to learn from the West. In less than 100 years, the Japanese went from isolation to an aggressive push to achieve dominion over the Pacific Basin. After their crushing defeat in World War II by the United States and its allies, the Japanese, with American help, turned all their energies to building a powerful economy. Now, an American president is going to the funeral of their wartime emperor.
And I think that the symbolism for me is that the post-war era is over.
Hugh Patrick is the director of the Center on Japanese Economy and Business at Columbia University in New York.
I don't think this symbolism is likely to affect the economy or business performance very directly.
One way or another, America is moving to study Japan and its success. But the effort is late and limited, and there are very few centers like this one.
A quarter of a century or so.
Ironically, the Columbia Center gets a lot of its financing from Japanese companies.
Japan went from being a country that had no net debtor or creditor status in the world to speak of, to being the largest creditor in the world within a matter of a few years. The basic reality is that Japan is not going to go away, economically or politically. Here you have the second largest economy in the world. It's a dynamic economy. It's not going to evaporate on us. We have to live with that. And part of our problem is to figure out how to do it in a constructive way.
They don't technology. They don't have quality of raw materials. They have to work, everything else.
Some American executives realize that understanding Japan is now serious business. This is an orientation program at the Japan Society in New York.
So continuous training and Buddhist thinking of continuously, everybody can be trained.
Japanese and American experts try to bridge the two cultures, everything from philosophy to international finance.
That means now U.S. has begun to run into the kind of bottleneck, shortage, chronic shortage of many things, including energy, including certainly technology, and so forth. President Bush's visit to Japan to participate in the funeral of Showa Emperor is another message to Americans, I believe. A message is that the United States cannot go it alone. She needs Japan.
Yoshi Tsurumi, a business consultant and lecturer, says America's leaders understand that a significant portion of the American national budget deficit is being financed by Japanese investments here, that the United States is, at least in part, dependent on Japan.
The United States needs the Japanese capital. Right now, just about closer to 40% of annual budget deficits being bankrolled, financed by the Japanese money, Japanese savings. And the United States cannot simply drop Japan. But the general public's perception, political perception that Japan has been riding free of charge, so-called free ride on the United States.
Some critics think there is at least an element of free ride in the trade deficit with Japan, that it is time to tell Japan bluntly that there must be a ceiling, that among other things, Japan must buy more or sell less in the United States.
The trade deficit now is $55 billion. We could just pick a number and say, look, we don't want this trade deficit to be more than $30 billion. And then sit down with the Japanese and figure out how we're going to work a trade deficit down from 55 to $30 billion. I believe the Japanese would be willing to do that.
Everyone praises Japan for moving into position recently as the #1 giver of foreign aid, surpassing the United States. But Clyde Prestowitz says that that's not enough, that Japan should help with the whole burden of costs involved in keeping world peace and assisting developing countries.
The burden consists of defense spending, aid spending, lending, and imports of manufactured goods from developing countries. If you count that burden up, the United States spends every year between $600 and $700 billion on that burden. And Japan is spending about $60 to $75 billion.
The power of the Japanese yen is heard now like a drumbeat through the country. We could learn from their energy, their dynamism. We could rethink the way we run our entire economy. We could renegotiate our relationship with Japan. But no one is sure that the United States will seize this moment and make it a beginning for ourselves and for our children.
Part of the anxiety about Japan is really an anxiety about America.
Hugh Patrick.
We are not competitive internationally. We don't know how to have management and labor work together well. Our educational system in the primary and secondary level is not doing as well for us as it's doing for the Japanese. We've just got to increase our level of competence.
Ambassador Hanabusa.
Problems are bound to happen. It's inevitable. And we shouldn't take them so seriously. I think we should not be overwhelmed by emotion. I think we have solved the questions in the past and we can solve them in the future.
Clyde Prestowitz.
We have been lucky. We've been lucky that we're rich. And we've been lucky that there's a guardian angel that watches over the United States. But we can't count on luck forever.